Welcome to the Brain Warriors Way podcast. I'm Dr. Daniel Amen.
And I'm Tana Amen. Here we teach you how to win the fight for your brain to defeat anxiety, depression, memory loss, ADHD, and addictions.
The Brain Warriors Way podcast is brought to you by Amen Clinics, where we've transformed lives for 3 decades using brain SPECT imaging to better target treatment and natural ways to heal the brain. For more information, visit amenclinics.com.
The Brain Warriors Way podcast is also brought to you by BrainMD, where we produce the highest quality nutraceutical products to support the health of your brain and body. For more information, visit brainmdhealth.com. Welcome to the Brain Warriors Way podcast.
Success starts here. One of my favorite lessons is think different. When people do bad things, ask why, then get them help. And, it's one of the reasons I became a psychiatrist, is I really wanted to understand why people did whatever they did. Why I did whatever I did. And then when we started imaging, everything changed. I mean, everything in my life changed. And then I got brutally criticized by my colleagues, and that was extremely painful. And then I think it was 2002, Apple's iconic Think Different commercial came out, and it's my favorite commercial of all time, and it was called Think Different. It was in response to IBM's commercial about their computer Think and the ThinkPad.
Interesting.
So Apple came out because, of course, they're different and think different. And it said, here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs and square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules. They have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
That's actually great. It's actually really great.
So when I was growing up, I grew up Roman Catholic, not kidding Catholic, as I like to say. My mom was really serious. And I went to Catholic school, and I was an altar boy. And the lore in my family, maybe in your family too, was that if you worked hard and did the right thing, you would be successful. And if you were lazy and didn't work hard, you wouldn't be successful. And it sort of worked for my mom and dad. I mean, my dad grew up very poor.
My mom too.
Ended up owning a chain of grocery stores and becoming the chairman of the board of a $4 billion company, Unified Grocers. And so I had that sort of mindset, work hard, it's going to be okay. And it worked for me. But then when I started looking at people's brains, I'm like, oh, it's more complicated than that. And as our imaging work became more well-known, defense attorneys started sending us people who did really bad things.
Right.
And then I got asked to testify in death penalty cases. And initially, the lore in my family is my dad would say things like, kill the bastard. He deserves to die. And it just started making me uncomfortable. Because I went, behavior is way more complicated than just free will, than just a choice. That not everybody has the same level of free will. And
that is really a hard one to get into and wrap your brain around.
It is. And it's different. But yet the science is clear that homeless people, there's a study from Toronto, 58% of the homeless men had a significant brain injury before they were homeless.
That's amazing.
42% of the homeless women had a significant brain injury before they were homeless. Is that their fault? Lead exposure, like what's going on in Flint, Michigan with lead in the water. Lead exposure clearly is a neurotoxin.
Right.
And it leads to learning problems, behavior problems, mood problems. Is that their fault? Probably not. And so, in thinking different, when people do bad things, you have to assess them in the 4 circles that you and I often talk about, and you help them in those 4 circles. And somebody, I don't know who, cut a 6-minute segment of a talk I did at Saddleback Church, where I talk about my nephew Andrew, who attacked a little girl on the baseball field for no particular reason. You can see the story on Illumably.
Got like 21 million views, something insane.
Right, and by the time the people here watch it, may have 30 million views. But my 9-year-old nephew attacks a little girl on the baseball field for no reason, out of the blue. And his mom calls me up crying, and I'm like, "What else is going on?" And she said, "Danny, he's different. He's mean. He doesn't smile anymore." I went into his room and found 2 pictures he had drawn. One of them, he was hanging from a tree. The other one, he was shooting other children. Andrew was Columbine, Aurora, Sandy Hook, waiting to happen. And when we scanned him, he had a cyst in his left temporal lobe. And when we took it out, his behavior immediately went back to normal.
Yeah.
And so when people do bad things, you have to ask why and get them help. And why do you do that? Because it's the most thoughtful thing to do. It's the most loving thing to do. The easy thing to do is judge them as bad. That's the easy thing, and throw them away, put them in a cage, kill them. And
we have to put some of them in cages. I'm sorry. I'm going to push back.
Well, some of them
they need to be in
need
cages.
to protect people from society. But what we don't do is ask why and then try to get them help. And by putting them in a cage, we are making them worse. So we just have to be clear.
I understand, but you're phrasing
it's
it.
About,
hold on, because there are people who have had bad things done to people they love. I'm going to push back for a minute. So no one said we didn't get controversial on this show. You call it a cage. I call it keeping society safe.
You absolutely have to do that.
So,
but in the process of keeping society safe, the human thing to do is to understand their behavior. So when they get out, and almost everybody does, they don't have to go back. And we don't do that.
I agree with you.
The prison system
we need to do a better job. I agree.
In the U.S. is about vengeance. It's not about rehabilitation. And vengeance, we incarcerate more people in the United States per capita than anywhere.
Our crime rate's insane.
In the world, than anywhere in the world. Clearly, our justice system is broken. So there's a study out of Washington State. There was a judge, David Admire, out of Redmond, Washington. Have you heard me tell this story? He had 2 adopted kids who had learning disabilities and ADD. And he's like, everybody who's coming in front of me reminds me of my kids. And so if you got convicted of a crime in his courtroom, he had you screened for ADD and learning disabilities.
That's amazing.
And then if you were guilty, part of your sentence was he court ordered you to a 14-week course to learn about what you had.
But that's amazing.
And for every dollar they spent on these kids, the state of Washington saved 7.
Wow.
There's another way. So you have to be thinking about when people do bad things, ask why and get them help. Now, not everybody wants help.
And not everybody should get out of jail.
And not everybody should get out of jail, because our first responsibility is to protect society. But our next responsibility is to ask why and see if it's not because they had Lyme disease, or if it's not because they had a brain injury, or because they have mercury toxicity. You got to ask yourself why. And so you and I, we always talk about a biopsychosocial, spiritual way to assess people in those four circles. And then we treat them in those four circles. And that's where our brain imaging work has just helped us so much. But if you miss the biology, you miss being able to help them. So with Andrew, it really wasn't a psychological or a social or even a spiritual problem. It was a biological problem. And when the cyst was drained, his behavior went back to normal.
And it's so interesting because I wasn't with you at that time that happened. But when I met Andrew, I mean, I know Andrew now, and he's just the sweetest kid. I mean, now he's married. He just got married. But I mean, I can't really imagine him being that way. So it's very interesting.
Right. So he was one of the lucky ones to have somebody who loved him, paying attention to his brain.
Well, and going to the right person who knew what to do for it. There are a lot of people who have people who love them, but they get the wrong treatment. It's not fair.
And we just need to do a better job with judgment. When people do bad things, so there's three areas of the brain to assess. So their prefrontal cortex, the executive part of the brain, focus, forethought, judgment, impulse control, empathy, learning from the mistakes you make. I treated one guy who could never let anything go, was fighting with his neighbors over trees on an easement, and he lost the case in court. And one day he wakes up to the sound of a chainsaw.
Yeah.
And he calls 911 and he said, I'm going to go kill the bastards. And then he puts the phone down, takes the gun, and goes and shoots them. And then he comes back and calls 911 again, and he said, I told you I was going to shoot them. And so it was part of a death penalty case, and I'm on the stand, and the judge said, not the judge, the prosecutor says, well, he called 911 ahead of time. Doesn't that indicate good planning? And in my head, I'm thinking, you're an idiot. But I didn't say it, right? Because I have good frontal lobe function. And I stopped, took a breath, and I said, no, it indicates bad planning. Who would call 911 before they went and killed people, right? You get a bad thought, I'm going to go shoot these people, good frontal lobes. Because even with good frontal lobes, you get the bad thought. A good frontal lobes will go, play that thing out. Right. You're going to be in a cage. They're going to feed you bad food. You're not going to have sex with your wife. It's not going to be good. You're not going to look good in orange, right? I mean, play this thing out. You know, I think he called 911 to protect himself. To protect himself from the impulses. Because he knew he had no control.
Interesting.
Now, does that mean he gets to go home? Absolutely not. But does that mean we should kill him? Absolutely not, at least in my opinion. Well, what if your cingulate's overactive? You can't let anything go. I had a police officer who I loved. His name was Seth, and he had 6 back surgeries. And he was so tired of the pain. He could never get away from the pain. He tried to kill himself. And so I met him in the psychiatric hospital after he was awake after the overdose. And as I scanned him, he had the hottest cingulate I'd seen at that time. And he's like, I hurt and I can never stop thinking about it. And I put him on an SSRI, a medicine to calm down his cingulate. And when he left the hospital, he said, I'm not suicidal anymore. I still hurt. But I don't think about it all the time.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So it wasn't obsessing about it.
He wasn't obsessing about it. And
Oh,
then we have to assess the temporal lobes because they're often involved in violent, aggressive behavior, like with Andrew or a number of other stories. The point of this lesson is when people do bad things, ask why, and then get them help. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Success Starts Here. We're talking about food today. We're talking about fueling your brain. So foods to choose for optimal brain performance, foods to lose to avoid failure. And this is so important, and people never make this connection until they actually hear the studies and the data and why it's so important to eat healthy. I'm always amazed that people don't make this connection.
So food is medicine.
Or it's poison.
Or it's poison.
Absolutely.
And you can choose. I mean, one of your best gifts is you can take super healthy food, I mean, medicine quality food, and make it taste awesome.
But everything you put on the end of your fork matters, and that's never truer than when we're talking about success and failure. Okay, because food, what you eat is affecting your neurotransmitters. It's affecting your hormones. So it affects your decision making day by day. It affects your moods over time. It's going to build, and it's going to really affect your moods, your relationships, how you interact with other people, how you see the world. Food matters. So it's really important. So let's talk about the rules.
So, but society is really
against you.
Against you.
Yes.
Right. Because if you think of success, focus, forethought, judgment, impulse control, empathy, relationships.
They know all the
And
science.
you are overweight. And we've already talked about, as your weight goes up, the size and function of your brain goes down. If belly fat is producing inflammatory cytokines, and cytokines and inflammation shrink your brain and are a cause of dementia and depression. They take healthy testosterone and turn it into unhealthy cancer-promoting forms of estrogen. You have to get your food right if you want to be as successful as you can be.
Well, and the crazy part is, before we jump into the food rules, is that, you know, you would think that it's like, okay, well, we've got all this information. We keep saying this information over and over again. People should, or, you know, could do what they're told when it comes to health. You should just make the right decision.
But it's
not,
change.
and it's not just that simple either. You really are being sabotaged, because here's the reality. The entire food industry knows brain science. They know neuroscience, and they use it. Okay, so you're being sabotaged. If you don't think, that's why we talk about thinking like a warrior so much and using the brain, the big brain God gave you, because if you are not paying attention, they know what music and jingles get into your head. But you can't eat just one and you still remember it, right? They know that using sex works. So sexy women, they know it works.
The Carl's Jr. commercial.
Oh, so you just can't even forget that. Not even still. Right. They know that flashing certain images in certain colors, doing that.
But see,
works.
I see both the girl and the burger as weapons of mass destruction.
Right. And that's how you have to think of it. And all of that happened before you ever put the thing in your mouth, because then that's a whole nother set of food science laws that have, they've discovered, and they've learned how to, meltiness, the right texture,
aroma.
It's crazy, right? The flavors, they know exactly how much sugar, salt, and fat to put in stuff to make you completely addicted. It's just nuts.
The bliss point.
Right. So it's not just...
And it wears out your pleasure center.
Right.
People who are obese, their nucleus accumbens is actually less responsive.
So they're more likely to be depressed.
So they're more likely to be depressed and more likely to overeat to try to just feel normal.
Right. So it becomes more about living to eat instead of eating to live. So it's really important to understand that it's not just as simple as I have the information, I need to do it. You actually need to be aware that there's an enemy out there. That's where you have to start. And then you have to have aware. Right.
Armed, prepared, and aware.
And you have to avoid.
All right. So help them in the 10 minutes we have. Help them pick the right things. Help them to develop a system for food to empower their success.
Yep. So the first thing I do is I think like either an athlete or a warrior, right? I think like an athlete or a warrior. Like when I was training for my black belt test, I knew that everything I ate was going to matter. If you're an athlete, everything you eat matters, right? So you got to put yourself in that place of being a warrior or an athlete. So the first rule is high quality calories and not too many of them. So calories do matter, but you've got to eat high quality calories. I don't care if you're only eating 800 of them. They've got to be high quality calories or they're still going to trigger inflammation. You can't go on a Twinkie diet. I'm sorry, that's just the reality. You've got to be eating high quality calories if you want to be successful.
Right. So in Jenny Craig or Weight Watchers, and they show these great desserts because they're low calorie, that you may lose weight, but you're going to get
sick. Now, we've got great desserts. I've got recipes for amazing desserts, but they're actually made with ingredients that are going to feed your brain, fuel your brain, as opposed to making you sick and increasing inflammation. So that's the first one. The second rule is meal timing matters. Okay, so when you eat matters.
So studies on intermittent fasting, you should have sort of a daily 12-hour fast, maybe even a 15-hour fast. But it's not hard. If you eat at 6 o'clock at night, don't eat again until 6 to 9 o'clock in the morning, because it turns on this process called autophagy,
right,
where it helps your brain clean up the trash that's been built up.
So when you're talking about success, really important, because you're not going to have brain fog.
And better to have more calories at lunch than dinner. So people who eat the same number of calories during the day, but they eat them when the sun's up versus when the sun's down, lose more weight.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, really interesting.
Right? And we want you to eat enough so that it maintains your blood sugar. So how do you do that?
So if you want to have a little bit of protein with each meal.
So what does that mean? Make that practical.
So I like to say shake hands with protein, right? About the size of the palm of your hand. That way, based on your size, right, it's sort of independent of like just a regular measurement.
So
it's about, for a woman, about 3 ounces. For a very large man, it could be 5 ounces of protein, but high quality protein with each meal. So think of, free range chicken, grass-fed meats, wild fish that's really clean. If you're a vegan, you want to be thinking of organic tofu, fermented tofu. That's probably one of your best options besides some of the, like we make a plant-based protein powder. That's a really good, but you still got to get your protein. Just because you're vegan doesn't mean you don't have to follow certain basic rules.
Protein's like medicine.
It's like medicine.
But you don't want to overdo protein because it can trigger inflammation.
Well, and if you think of it like medicine, you'd never go take, if the doctor ordered for you to take 6 pills of something during the day, intermittently throughout the day at certain intervals, you're not going to go take all 6 of them at once. It's going to make you sick. You need it in small doses throughout the day. And then include some high quality fat. So things like fish oil, avocado, nuts, seeds. These are the types of fats, coconut, that are going to help satisfy you. They actually improve the satiation. So the protein increases focus and the fat makes you feel full longer. So it's really important. It also is really good for hormones and things like that, for helping you to keep your hormones healthy. And then you need the right carbohydrates. So it's really important to have the right carbohydrates.
Smart carbs as opposed to dumb carbs.
Exactly.
And I'm not being facetious when I say dumb carbs. So sugar has actually been shown to increase learning disabilities in children and in animals.
And increases rapid brain cell firing, right?
Turns erratic brain cell firing. It's addictive.
Right.
And it's been associated with increased aggression.
So it goes up and down. So you're like constantly, you're never feeling quite stable.
So dumb carbs are sugar, bread, pasta, potatoes.
And almost all processed food, because they're just the wrong kind of carbs.
Which are loaded with grains like corn and soy that increase your
and trans fats, and it's just really awful.
Bad fats.
We also skipped over don't drink your calories. You want to get plenty of water. It's one of the fastest ways to perk up your brain is to be hydrated. Being dehydrated by only 2% can radically affect your cognition. So make sure you are hydrated throughout the day. It's really important.
And then spices are like medicine.
Yes. So we think of them, like I always say, probably better to keep them in your medicine cabinet than in your kitchen cabinet. They are just so powerful. So we are constantly loading our food with herbs and spices. And it's just a really powerful way to increase antioxidants, especially for kids. Kids who are picky and won't eat a lot of green stuff, cinnamon, nutmeg, vanilla, all of those things have really powerful benefits. So really
eat
good
from
for
the
you.
Rainbow. Eat foods with many different colors.
As you like to say.
Not Skittles.
Right.
And then if you're struggling with ADD, anxiety, depression, irritability, brain fog, go on an elimination diet, at least for a month. Get rid of sugar, corn, soy, dairy,
right. Gluten.
And people go, oh, well, there's nothing less to eat. Well, that's true.
400 recipes.
If you're just eating, at McDonald's. But there's so many things to eat. I mean, there are literally thousands of things. God gave you a big brain.
And I've come up with hundreds of recipes that are very simple just because
so what
people
do we
say
eat
that.
During the day? So we start the day. I make you a cappuccino.
Yeah, Chloe and I will usually start with warm lemon water with a little ginger because that hydrates your brain. And then we have our almond milk cappuccino, which is like, by the time we're done with it, quarter calf. It has very little caffeine in it. You can do it with decaf.
And it's 40 calories. So
40
it's
calories.
Smart.
Right.
It tastes amazing. And then, I'll often make you eggs. And I'll have a cup of frozen blueberries.
I often have smoothies. So I have my kitchen set up so they're quick to make with plant-based protein powder. I throw in a whole bunch of greens, about less than a cup of berries of some kind, and some stevia. And it's really pretty simple. And I usually put a little fat in it.
I may or may not have a snack in the morning, maybe some couple of nuts and an apple. And then for lunch, I usually have a salad. I like this one Greek salad. It's got lots of veggies. I never let anybody put dressing on my salad. I like oil and vinegar, so I put the vinegar on first and then a little bit of oil because it saves calories that way. We make Brain and Love, which is a chocolate bar that's sugar-free, dairy-free. I'll usually have that after lunch.
And one of the things I do is to make life easy. Whenever we're cooking, we make extra of whatever we're cooking, and then I just automatically pack it in sort of lunch-size containers, and that's my lunch the next day. So it might have been the rosemary thyme chicken that we made the night before, or maybe it is chicken wings,
and people go, oh, well, this is hard. This is totally not hard.
No.
We're in a routine, and that's what we want you. You're already in a routine that maybe is not working for you. So you want to get in a routine of things that serve your health.
And by the way, you do get to have some desserts as long as the desserts are healthy. Things like Nutty Buttercups or...
I have one probably every day.
Right. And there's 2 ingredients, sugar-free, dairy-free chocolate and some almond butter. And it's a super easy thing to make. Or some blueberry muffins, but they're the kind of blueberry muffin that is not like a commercially made muffin. They're going to fuel success for you.
And I'll never
or brownies.
go like a regular muffin before. I'd want 2 or 3 of them.
Right.
And here, one and I'm just happy.
Right. You should feel satisfied. You should not be triggered to eat more.
So success really does start with your food. If you just get anything out of that and you can get your food right. Tana's got a great cookbook, The Brain Warrior's Way cookbook. She's also got other ones, Live Longer with the Brain Doctor's Wife, Healing ADD Through Food.
Brain Warrior's Way is where I made it really easy.
The Brain Warrior's Way is super easy. Success starts here at the end of your fork. Stay with us. Success starts here. This is the last in this series. And success starts here really means between your ears and the 3 pounds of fat that run your life.
Yep. I think most people don't even really think about that. They don't think about that it starts with their brain. They think about whatever new headlines are out, whatever new gadget or new book or new strategy, but they don't think about their brain.
Because why?
I think because they just don't know. Honestly, I think I never was taught that growing up. I was never told, oh, your brain matters. It was always like, be skinnier, look better, be fitter. But no one ever talked about my brain.
Have more passion, have more purpose.
Right. But where does all of that start? It starts in your brain.
Between your ears. So as we finish this lesson, what we really want to give you is a strategy to have a better brain and a better life, to really, how can you love your brain specifically so you love your life. And I had no idea, and I was a double board certified psychiatrist, right? I was actually top in my class in neuroscience.
Right.
Loved that part, and still never treated my brain as if it was the most important organ in my body.
Right.
Right? It's, I sort of cared more about my belly than my brain, which is
Well, as a
odd.
society, it's just what we tell people. But when I met you, it was so interesting when you can actually see what's going on. It makes such a difference.
Wasn't that the first part of you I really wanted to see?
Yes, it was very odd. But it was so interesting. So, and it makes sense when you really think about it. We just don't stop and think about it.
So why people don't care
Yeah.
about their brain is because they don't see it. They never look. And so we live in Newport Beach, and we have a lot of plastic surgeons here. And we often say people care more about their faces, their boobs, their bellies, and their butts
Right.
than they do their brain. And you used to work for a plastic surgeon.
Yeah, I worked in a trauma unit, and on our weekends, they would always recruit us to work in their surgery centers. And it was always so interesting going from a trauma unit to a plastic surgery center. The difference was it was a little hard to adjust. So,
And did anybody in the plastic surgery center really care about their brains?
well, they weren't talking about it for sure.
No, they cared about fixing
Right.
the wrinkles or their nose or
Right.
their chest and so on. And if you really think about it, where does happiness start?
In your brain.
Where does our relationship start?
In your brain.
Where does motivation start?
In your brain. And it's so interesting. Like I said, it's easy to buy into pop culture and fads and headlines when you don't know. When I met you, and it's still to this day, there's this idea that drinking a glass of wine every day or even two is good for you. But when I started to see, I bought into that idea. I'm like, oh, I can have a glass of wine every night and it's no big deal, right? It helps you relax, helps you sleep. I didn't think it was a big deal because it's what you are told is good for you. And then I started to see scans. You're like, really? You want to see? And you showed me scans of brains. And I was like, holy cow, that's not good for you. And so when you can see it, it changes everything.
Changed everything in my
Changes
life.
everything.
When I looked at my brain and it wasn't very healthy.
That's all it took for me.
Compared to my 60-year-old mother, who had a beautiful brain, which really reflects her life. She was in the hospital this week. I was so sad. And I went and sat with her last night. And we're recording this right before Christmas. And she shopped for 70 people.
Crazy.
But she knew what she had bought everyone.
Right.
And why they would like this or that. It was just so special.
And she was here she's in the hospital and she's devastated that we are making the executive decision to cancel Christmas at her house where she's going to cook for almost 100 people. It's like,
no, I don't think so. All right. So success starts here between your ears. Let's talk about 5 simple ways people can have the brain and the success they want. And the first one is you have to develop brain envy. Mm-hmm. Have to really care about your brain and then act on it every day. And this is when you come to that fork in the road that people do dozens of times every day, and you have a decision to make. We just want you to ask yourself, is what I'm going to do now good for my brain or bad for it?
So I have to tell a funny story. So we've effectively done this with our kids, right? So Chloe, the youngest one, she is 14 now. Super funny. So she's got this idea in her head, and I love it, that she wants to be that kid who never tries alcohol or drugs. I love that idea, right? She just decided this, and she's like, I want to actually be able to say that I never did this. And so she's got this idea in her head, and she's just like, she's a little stubborn, which is helpful sometimes. Sometimes it's helpful. So she's seen what it does to your brain, and she just wants nothing to do with it. And she's told me, why would people do things that they know can ruin the rest of their lives?
Oh,
I don't
talk
understand.
about the Poison concert.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about. So I took her to a Def Leppard and Poison concert, right? And a couple of funny things happened. First of all, she's looking around at all the people my age and all the moms who are acting completely psychotic. And she goes, if I ever see you twerking, I will kill you myself. She goes, is this how mothers act when we're not around? And so I'm like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. And then all of a sudden, the people in front of us, of course, pull out a joint and they light up. And Chloe flips out. She flips out. She's holding her breath. She's trying to get out of the aisle. She's like trying to jump over people to get out of the aisle. She was so upset because she's already made this declaration that she's never going to get high. She's never going to do drugs or drink or anything. So she's so angry at this person in front of us. So I'm trying to shield her so she doesn't have so she literally doesn't go off on this guy in front of us. And she's trying to get out of the aisle and get away from him because she just does not want to have to say that she even got a contact high. And so she gets out of the aisle. She's really mad. She's like, why would you bring me to a concert where people are smoking pot all around me? She calls Daniel on the phone in the aisle. She goes, if you scan me and it shows up on my scan, I didn't do it. Mom did it. She was really upset.
So she has brain envy.
Right.
She wants a better brain. And actually, when we scanned her, it was so helpful because it showed the stubbornness.
It showed that stubbornness. It showed the
It was
anxiety and the
so
stubbornness, the intensity.
helpful.
Yeah.
So you have to care. I mean, and then you make every decision from a mindset of love. You love yourself. You love your brain. You love your life. You love your mission. You love your wife. You love your daughters. So you make the right decision. People go, oh, it's hard, or, oh, don't you want to have any fun? And it's like, I have more fun than anybody, I know.
Right.
And I don't want to hurt myself because I love myself.
Right.
It's an act of love to do the right thing. Until you get that concept, it'll be really hard for you to be well. It's part of the Brain Warriors Way concept, which our book has come out in paperback.
I know.
It's so exciting. The second part of this 5-step process is you avoid anything that hurts your brain. And you just have to know the list. And if you listen to the Brain Warriors Way podcast, we've been talking about it. So we've already talked about a couple today: drugs, alcohol, head trauma,
right.
environmental toxins, stressful relationships, which is why we try to keep ours reasonably stress-free.
Yeah, the stress in our lives is because we're busy doing cool things, but which can still be really stressful. You have to be able to manage it.
And you finish remodeling the house.
Oh, don't ever. Never again.
Never again. So that would be on the list of bad things
Very
for
stressful.
your brain.
Very stressful.
And then some unexpected things. I mean, like getting Lyme, infections, environmental toxins like mold. I was talking to someone recently, and they had really bad, it was actually my mom. They had to move out of their house because of all the mold, and she kept getting pneumonia over and over and over again. And the mold was damaging her immune system. So that's the second thing. The third thing is to engage in regular brain healthy habits to create a strong foundation for success. So what are the things you do that strengthen your brain?
Well, I mean, I love to meditate. So waking up in the morning and meditating and focusing on what I'm grateful for with my family. You know, we do that a lot even at dinner time. We'll just be sitting around and it's like, wow, we just have a really good life. And we focus on the things we love because we're really busy. And it would be really easy to focus on the stress or the busyness or the, you know.
I mean, we could totally be bitter.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you and I could just like make a list of all the things we're
we have
bitter
you know
for.
multiple family members that we help and we take care of and we're getting, you know, but we don't.
But we're not bitter about that.
But instead we focus on the fact that we can and we're grateful for that, right? So that we can make a difference in somebody's life. So it's really how you frame things. And I think that's really important. Exercise, eating healthy, staying hydrated, making sure you focus on sleep. All of it's important.
And I start every day with today is going to be a great day. In fact, I have that on my to-do list. So the list I look at every morning on what I need to get done that day.
Right.
It starts with today is going to be a great day. And then my brain will find why it is going to be a great day. And then one of the things I do for you is I make your
You do.
pumpkin spice cappuccino
You're so funny because
every morning.
you call me. He calls me like almost every day. It's like, did I tell you I love you today? And occasionally it's like, we were running out the door and he didn't tell me. I'm like, no, but you made my coffee. So it's like, that's a big deal.
That's how I tell her I love
Right.
her. Plus, I
love
love
it.
it. So engage in regular brain healthy habits. And then one that probably nobody else will tell you about is you have to know your brain type. Not everybody has the same brain. And so you want to know your brain. I think one of the reasons Chloe's awesome, besides you read to her every day, every night,
And I
in
read
bed
really cool
for
books.
years.
Really cool books.
I attribute that so much. It's and we dinner together.
Yeah.
It's actual physical time that relationships require actual physical time.
I was cleaning out her little library, and I'm like, I had some cool books I read to that kid. Kid versions of John Wooden and Stephen Covey, and all these really cool books, and your books, and Byron Katie books, and just tons of them, stacks of them that I had read to her when she was little. It was so cool.
Right. So the brain has hardware and software. So by feeding you right, by not letting kids engage in sports that could damage their brain, that is helpful, but then you have to program it.
I need to say something about this, this idea of brain types, because when Chloe was little, she was very not an easy child when she was little. She's an amazing teenager, but she was not that easy when she was little, right? So there was this time where in addition to her anxiety, we actually suspected that she might have ADD. Like I wasn't sure what was going on. Her anxiety was making it really hard for her to focus. I didn't know if she had ADD or what. Well, without getting checked, I actually put her on one of our supplements to help her focus more. And I didn't really know her type, and it was not a good move. Okay, it made her really over-focused. So when she got scanned, it turned out that was totally the wrong thing, because she actually has a really over-anxious brain. So to put her on something that's going to stimulate her more was not a good move.
Right. So
And the other side of it was I have a niece that wanted to be scanned. We thought for sure she had I thought for sure she had anxiety off the charts. And that's not what it was. She had
really
something
low
toxic,
activity.
and she had really low activity.
So
you
it is
can't
critical
guess.
to know your type. And there are 5 major types. There's the balanced type, which is fairly rare, people who have nothing going on, they just have a healthy brain.
Mm-hmm.
The second type is spontaneous. These are the people who have trouble focusing. They're spontaneous. They tend to be impulsive. They don't have a great filter. They just sort of say the first thing that comes into their mind, but they're often very creative. They often have sleepy frontal lobes. Type 3 is the persistent type, that would be Chloe, where the front part of their brain works too hard, usually due to low levels of serotonin, and worried, rigid, and flexible.
And can beat
Things
themselves
don't
up
go
if
their
things aren't
way,
perfect.
They get upset. They tend to see too many errors in themselves, but sometimes also in other people. It's very important. I often see that type in children or grandchildren of alcoholics. And then there's the sensitive type, can be really sad, and the cautious type, which tends to be anxious. And we have recommendations for supplements for each of these types, also behavioral interventions. And it's just critical to know your type. If you want to know your type, go to brainhealthassessment.com. It's completely free. brainhealthassessment.com. You'll learn your type and what are the things I recommend to help people with.
Much better than guessing.
That type.
You don't want to guess.
And then the last thing to optimize your brain, to really welcome success in your life is I think everybody should take a multiple vitamin. Brand new study out by the CDC, 90% of Americans do not get anywhere near 5 servings of fruits and vegetables.
And even if you do, I'm just going to jump in here because most people don't eat the way that they should. But even if they did, it's not just about that. It's about the environmental toxins in the air. Unless you're getting perfect sleep, you're not being exposed to toxins, you're under no stress. It's what that multiple vitamin does is it just bridges the gap.
Omega-3 fatty acids, a study we did, 98% of the patients we see have low levels of omega-3 fatty acids that are associated with every bad thing pretty much in the body, heart disease, cancer, inflammation, dementia, depression. So I think everybody should be taking omega-3 fatty acid supplements, particularly fish oil. And then everybody should measure and optimize their vitamin D level. Now, when I was working on my next book, I came across this quote from Warren Buffett, and it's his rules of investing. Rule number 1, don't lose money.
Don't lose what you have.
Rule number 2 was refer back
Right,
to rule number 1. And as I thought about it, I said, this is perfect for our work here at Amen Clinics. Rule number 1 is don't lose brain cells, right? So you go, oh, it's New Year's Eve. I need to get drunk. And it's like, okay, you're going to murder millions of brain cells.
Murder brain cells.
And, they don't come back that easily, right? I mean, there's this whole new concept of neuroplasticity, and your brain makes new cells, but not at that kind of rate, right? I mean, hippocampus makes 700 new stem cells every day. You really want to be murdering millions when you're making 700 a day? I'm not thinking that's a great idea.
Yep.
In order for you to have the best success of your life, it is absolutely essential for you to take care of the 3 pounds of fat between your ears. Success starts here, between your ears. Stay with us. Thank you for listening to the Brain Warriors Way podcast. Go to iTunes and leave a review, and you'll automatically be entered into a drawing to get a free signed copy of the Brain Warriors Way and the Brain Warriors Way cookbook we give away every month.